Howdy folks, you're listening to Smarticus Tells History, the podcast where we discuss some of the wacky and crazy stories your friends may have told you. So sit down, have a beer or two, and let's learn a thing or two. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are here yet again, and I welcome you back to the show. And this week, we're on episode 8 of Smarticus Tells History. I am your host, Smarticus. Now, I want you to imagine that you're in the 1700s, you're a peasant, and you're trying to feed your family. The skies are clear and have been for months, which isn't good. No rain means your crops can't grow, which means you can't pay your taxes that were just raised yet again because your kingdom is at war with other kingdoms. You begin talking to your fellow farmers and begin putting together a small but convincing crowd of followers to confront your lord of the village. However, you never get the chance. Somebody runs and cries to the lord about you and your posse. The guards come, and they take you away. They begin to torture you by stretching you out on that big long table like in Braveheart. They beat you and slice you to shreds until you start telling them things you didn't know in the first place. The lord of the town wants to make an example out of you and make your execution public. The problem the lord has, however, is that he doesn't want to simply hang you or behead you. He wants it to be something completely brutal. And then one of the blacksmiths mentioned something new that they had been thinking about. A box that is like a coffin and shaped like a person. Not all that different than an Egyptian sarcophagus. Only we stand ours upright, and then we fill it with spikes and leave little gaps in it so that the blood can drain out when we use it. What a brutal and horrible show that would be. And it absolutely would have been. Except that the Iron Maidens were never used. At least not that history can prove. There are absolutely zero writings or references to Iron Maidens actually have been used. It isn't all that surprising, I suppose. We have all kinds of inventions that are made today that are never used, like the Google Glass or refrigerators that connect to the internet. It would seem that some people just want their refrigerators to just keep things cold. Now, there have been a couple torture devices that were used that were similar to the Iron Maidens. One such device was the one used to kill Marcus Artilius Regulus. He was a Roman general who was captured and tortured by the Carthaginians. Apparently, he was placed inside of a box that was full of nails. However, those nails didn't actually kill him. Somehow, the nails were designed to only kill him when he fell asleep. The general instead kept himself awake and ended up dying of sleep deprivation anyways. The oldest record of the Iron Maidens was a mention by a man named Johann Philippe Siebenkees in the 18th century. He was a historian who wrote a guidebook to the German city of Nuremberg. He wrote that in 1515 a criminal of some kind was executed using an Iron Maiden. Apparently, according to Johann, the spikes in the Iron Maiden were actually not long enough to kill him by design, and the criminal suffered for 2 days before dying. However, Johann's story was severely doubted and widely believed to have simply been made up by the historian. Or that he had simply made a mistake and confused the Iron Maiden with a device that was worn by German prostitutes and poachers for humiliation. The device was called a Schandmantel, or coat of shame, and it was very similar to an Iron Maiden, but it did not contain spikes inside of it. Regardless of whether or not his story was true, it is widely believed that his writings began the inspiration behind the mass construction of Iron Maidens based on his stories. Because of this, they were closely associated with the city of Nuremberg, and the people began calling them the Nuremberg Virgin, which was an Iron Maiden topped with the head of the Virgin of Mary, and the Iron Maiden of Nuremberg. Now, some of these Iron Maidens were also constructed with a spike in the mask that would impale your throat when it was closed. By the time the 19th century rolled around, the Iron Maidens were starting to be constructed in other cities around Europe. And in 1893, an Iron Maiden had made its way to the World's Fair in Chicago. Those that were made in this time were pieced together using various medieval artifacts that were found and shown to those that were curious, but for a fee, of course. The more Iron Maidens that were constructed, the more stories began to spread about their origin and how they supposedly were once used during the Inquisition. Some even stating that they were used as early as the 12th century. None of this can be proven, of course. If you are interested in seeing one yourself in person, they are displayed in numerous museums around the world and in Hollywood, of course. There is actually an Iron Maiden on display at San Diego's Museum of Man's Instrument of Torture. Now, There's recently a mention of an Iron Maiden being found in Baghdad at the National Olympic Committee compound. Apparently, at one point in time, the country's football federation was based here, and Uday Hussein, Saddam Hussein's son, was the head of the committee. The story is that the Iron Maiden belonged to him and that he would use it to punish the athletes who underperformed. However, there is no actual proof of this. I hope you guys enjoyed the show, and if you have heard any wacky and crazy stories that you want told here, you can go to our Facebook page at Smarticus Tales History and leave a comment. Now, with that being said, I'll see you next time, and you guys have a wonderful, fantastic, and awesome day. Bye now.